Hey, Peach.
Hello.
Hi. Just before we get started, we usually do a little bit of housekeeping while we're waiting for the room to get some more people in it and stuff. So thought we could start with that if everybody's ready. So I think first we just wanted to again say thank you to N.A.A. Last Sunday for hosting this space with Kara Dansky. Super interesting. She's just really just such a font of knowledge and commitment. So that was really amazing. I wanted to also give a shout out to Nay for tomorrow. She'll be hosting Mia Hughes, the author of the WPATH Files report. So if you can tune in for that, it'll be well worth it. And then I think it's in 2 weeks. I might be mistaken, but Our Duty Canada is also going to be hosting a space with Mia coming up. And they also have a letter that they would like signed. So for any Canadians, now Our Duty is international, so it may be beyond the scope of Canada as well. That they have a letter to be signed. I'm going to try and pop it into the nest here, but it's me, so that doesn't always work. But I'm going to give it a shot. We wanted to give a shout out to other people's spaces that we are enjoying. Um, L Squad and Sundyke both having lesbian spaces, one in German, and those both going very well. Mark, Admiral Invalidator, having his Tuesday talks, which have been really interesting and lots of good guests. It's kind of the middle of the night for a lot of us, but lots of really good guests. He's had Genevieve Gluck has been in to speak numerous times now. Kit and Edie often, or especially Edie, are dropping in, and so there's lots of really good chat going on in those spaces as well. You don't have to be famous to speak either. He's good with letting people have their piece. So we also wanted to give a shout out, of course, to our beloved Amie Ham, whose tribunal finished up last week, and there was already lots of spaces about that and stuff. But yeah, just kudos to her legal team, to everybody involved. And now it could be months of waiting. I mean, this has just been a torturous process for no frickin' reason. So annoying. But anyway, well done to her. She really held her own, and well done to Lisa and her the other people in her legal team too. That was really a good closing day. I'm going to try also to put a link into Heather's speech at the Cosbar event on International Women's Day, and a link for Amy's documentary as well. So I'm going to give it a shot, you guys, but technology and me, it's not a thing. So have I missed anything, Peach? Is there other stuff?
You would ask me the moment I walked away.
I
No.
would.
No, I can't really think of anything. Just that, we had the women's event in Australia today, and shout out to the women who attended that.
Yeah, that was really something to see the level, the sheer number of police that are required to make an event like that happen, just to keep the two sides apart. Not that our side ever goes for them, but you know how that goes. Yeah, so it was really, really something to see. I've shared that actually with some people who are not quite peaked yet, and man, they were just astounded. So, yeah, anyway, just so excited to have Heather Mason and Amie Ichikawa on the space tonight to talk about the state of women's prisons in North America. It's a subject that we've wanted to deal with for a long time and didn't want to deal with without people who have actual knowledge from the inside and possibly suggestions as to how we can help and all that kind of stuff. So, Heather, can you introduce yourself and give us some of your background?
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Oh, we're
So,
thrilled, honestly.
so I'm actually a formerly incarcerated woman. I was incarcerated at Grand Valley Institution for Women in Kitchener, Ontario. I received a 3-year sentence, and I was actually in and out of jail prior to going to prison. I had a drug addiction. I was addicted to fentanyl really bad for a lot of years, and I just could not get clean, and I kept getting arrested. Finally, my last arrest was in 2017, where I got my federal sentence, and coming up on 7 years clean, which is awesome. When I got out of prison, I started advocating with the Elizabeth Fry Society, speaking on panels about segregation and strip searching. And then I started speaking out about men being transferred to women's prisons and became a founding member of Canadian Women's Sex-Based Rights.
Well, I had actually heard of you before I heard about Canadian Women's Sex-Based Rights, which I'm a big fan of and an associate of. But yeah, so can you tell us about like the protests that you've done in Canada? We've seen a lot of, I think the kind of billboard dropping from the overpasses and things like that. What else is going on, Heather?
Yeah, so we've done, I can't even count how many because I thought I had the number right and it's wrong. But we actually started protesting for International Women's Day back in 2021 outside of Grand Valley Institution. And we've done quite a few protests. And then in September 2021, we actually had our first nationwide protest. So we had women protesting outside of the different prisons across Canada. So there was the women in Quebec and Nova Scotia and Alberta and BC, and we had a protest happen in Ottawa at the same time. And it was really cool to have like women from across the country protesting. And then we had our first like international day of protesting for women in prison, where we saw protests happen in the United States and in the UK at the same time. And since then, I've been recently protesting in Toronto because it's easier for people to get to. So there's also been banner drops over highways, like the women in Alberta are great for that. And my friend, I don't know if anyone knows Aaliyah, but Aaliyah was incarcerated at the Fraser Valley Institution in Abbotsford, BC, and she's been leading my prison protests with Amie Ham in BC. Then they're actually planning to do a protest in April in BC. So if you live in BC, you should get a hold of Amie or Aaliyah, because they're trying to plan one. So there's been well over 20 protests across Canada since 2021 to raise awareness about women in prison and the transfer policy.
That's amazing. I'm going to let Amie introduce herself as our kind of U.S. Correspondent this evening. Hi, Amie. Wonderful to meet you.
Hi, thank you so much for letting me join the space. Hi, Heather. I'm so excited to share this time with you too. I just appreciate the fact that you guys are giving some attention to this and helping raise awareness. I am also formerly incarcerated. I spent 5 years in a California state prison for terrorist threats with a firearm. It was a drug deal gone wrong, and you know, it was very unfortunate, but I really wouldn't change the way things have gone down, because otherwise I wouldn't have known that this was such a horrible issue, and I wouldn't be able to speak into this with experience. So in 2013, I was released from Central California Women's Facility, and I really didn't think I was going to start a nonprofit or, you know, do any of this. I had no idea. But in 2021, when the Transgender Respect Agency and Dignity Act began implementation in both of California's women's prisons, there was no way I couldn't do what I'm doing now. I got so many messages and phone calls and emails just from women I don't even know. Some of them I've never even met before, and it was overwhelming. It was almost palpable. You could feel the fear, the horror, that the anxiety that all these women were experiencing, just knowing that men's feelings were more important than their safety and well-being. And that's kind of where we are.
Can you speak a little bit to the documentary, Amie? I know I've watched clips from it. I haven't seen it in its entirety, but I've watched clips from it and it just broke my heart. But can you talk about that and where it's available to be seen? And
Absolutely. I've been really blessed by the relationship that the Independent Women's Forum has started to harbor with me. They reached out and invited me to be an ambassador and said, let's film a little docu-series. And I feel like they were able to really respectfully and accurately put together a small window into exactly what the last 2.5, almost 3 years have been like. It's available on the Independent Women's Forum website and their YouTube channel. And it's just short 9-minute clips, 9 to 10 minute clips. We just released mine, I think, last weekend, and we have another one coming up soon, and they're finishing a couple more. So stay tuned, and please, if you haven't gotten a chance to watch, please do. I'm really, really, really pleased with the way it came out.
yeah, it really is something. And Heather, you got a chance to do some writing. Is that correct? There was a book that came out that was a compilation, I believe, that you were part of.
Yeah, I wrote a chapter in WDI's book on gender identity. There were women from across the globe that wrote about different things to do with gender identity and the harms to women. And there's also like country reports as well that give you, like, basically list out how gender identity operates in their country and their laws regarding it. It was a great experience being able to submit a chapter and let everybody across the world know what's going on to women in prison in Canada.
Yeah, definitely. And just for anybody up in the nest, you should be able to. I put a link for Heather's, well, for all the speeches at the Reality Based Women conference on International Women's Day in Toronto, and Heather's speech is a hallmark of that, and a link for Amie's part of the documentary. Although the thing in its entirety, like I said, I've watched now a few clips, and holy smokes, if that doesn't break your heart, you don't have one. That's all I can say. Those women. So I think we're going to open it up and let you guys ask questions and speak with Heather and Amie and stuff. So if you want a mic, please request. Otherwise, it's just me.
Well, I have a question, more towards Amie, since I'm in the U.S. I'm in Washington State, and it's horrible here for incarcerated women. It's horrible here for women in general, which I know you're aware of and stuff. I, the frustrating part for me is, how do I reach the women who claim to be progressive, liberal, all that stuff, uh, except for when it comes to women not having safe spaces, like being in prison with men. Do you find, this is really what my question is, people who advocate for prisoners' rights and stuff, is there a divide in there amongst when it comes to the transgender issue, is really what I wanted to ask.
Yes, that's such a good question, and I would love to know how to reach the liberal women too that are in the legislature. It's so overwhelming that, like, in California, the Women's Caucus fully supported SB 132 all the way across the board. and I know you're facing the same problems up there. There are people who claim to be social justice warriors, and they really advocate for prisoners' rights and, stop slavery in the prisons, and we have to have humane conditions, except in the sense of women being in a safe space that's free of men. I run into this wall all the time. It's very, I'm almost at my wit's end. I mean, I'm not going to stop or anything, but it's very frustrating because time and time again, there's other people working against me constantly. For every 2 steps I take forward, they knock me a few more steps backwards with, their efforts that are moving in the exact opposite direction as mine. There are large organizations, and they're very financed very, very well. They have a whole lot of support, and they are, well-known NGOs. They have very close relationships with the legislature, and I'm still building. So it's a little complicated. I feel like helping to introduce the women inside who are struggling with this issue makes a difference. It kind of personalizes it for them. That's why I think that the docuseries is going to be pretty helpful. Actually, we've had a couple of very, very, very far left women's offices ask for the documentary in full, which I don't have yet, but it is hopeful in that sense. But as far as, I don't even know what to do anymore. I don't know exactly how to key in on that because they're so convinced that this is not a problem. I just have been persistent and consistent in the persistency.
Yeah, it's the largest blind spot in our species history comes down to, it just floors me that there's women, especially out there, that have such a blind spot to this. So I was just wondering, within the prison rights advocacy or groups, like when did you start noticing a change that it wasn't so much about women's rights, but about transgender identifying males' rights?
In 2019, I think I was in a cohort with a lot of organizations that have women in their name, and some of the more progressive organizations in California. And I thought it was great. We were creating curriculum for how to prevent gender-based violence. And I thought that was normal and great until I realized that they were remarketing domestic violence as something that like men suffer from regularly. I noticed that the language was changing, and they didn't want me to enter the group without using my pronouns, and I didn't get it. I didn't see what was the big deal. I said, just go ahead and use my name because that's what you've always called me for the last 10 years. So why are we going to change it? And then I noticed that there was the language was so fluid. And then that's when I started to dig a little deeper and saw who the cohort was funded by, and that it was all moving in the direction of what I consider trans supremacy. So about 2019.
I think something that I noticed and I found absolutely shocking was the Elizabeth Fry Society, which I always held such esteem for and thought they were working on behalf of women and this particularly vulnerable group of women who, so often come from, poverty and addiction and other social issues and everything. And yet they are leading the charge of continuing to put these men into women's prisons. What do you know about them, Heather, and their kind of agenda?
So the Elizabeth Fry Society, I hold them dear to my heart, and it's really unfortunate what they've done because they played such a critical role in my release to the community and building my self-esteem and giving me confidence and the ability to speak on panels about women and things that impact them in prison. And they were just like a solid foundation for me when I was released. And it's sad that it's gone this way. I didn't really realize what was going on. I was in the Elizabeth Fry halfway house in Toronto, and the manager there was like, "Hey, CAFES." So CAFES is the Canadian Association of Elizabeth Fry Societies, and they're like, I think of it like an umbrella. So CAFES is at the top, and the little spokes are the E-Fries, and the E-Fries are typically women's halfway houses. So they're under CAFES membership. So whatever CAFES policies are what E-Fry has to follow. So the manager of the halfway house was like, "Hey, CAFES is having their national conference in Ottawa. They're giving away up to 10 scholarships. So basically paying for travel and accommodation to the conference. You just have to basically write your story and explain why they should pick you." And I ended up winning. And they paid for me to get to Ottawa from Toronto. And I went, and I didn't know at the time, but it was their AGM and they were passing their inclusion policy. And there was a girl I knew from prison, an Indigenous woman, and she has an extensive history of childhood trauma and sexual abuse. And when she was in Grand Valley, she was there when Matthew Harks was there, the prolific serial pedophile. And he used to groom her and sexually harass her, and it really stirred up a lot of her childhood trauma. And she was at this conference and she got up on stage in front of all the employees of like CAPES and E-Fry and like other women who were supportive of the work that they do. And there's tons of us there. And she told the women that what Harks did to her and how she was having a trauma response and how she didn't have support. And the E-Fry CAFES women said, "You don't need a vagina to be a woman, and I'm concerned about the transphobia in this room." And she left the stage crying. And I just couldn't believe that these women who are paid to support and advocate for us women were turning their backs on us. The weekend was a huge wake-up call. It was there was a lot of crying and a lot of yelling. It was like them against us, and we either stepped in line and thought and believed and agreed with what they said, or we were the outcasts. It was a very, very emotional weekend, and I realized at that point that this organization that I looked up to and appreciated was basically just going to kick me to the curb, and all these other women that I knew. And it was that point there I realized that none of them are going to do anything about this policy. They're just going to keep powering through with this trans women are women bullshit. And that's when I decided that I was going to stand up for the women and start advocating for them. And what I came to realize is that it all comes down to funding. So in order to be funded, you have to meet requirements. And part of the public safety funding and the United Way funding and like all their other funding is they have to be inclusive. And if they're not inclusive, then they're not going to get their funding. But what I also realized too was that all the women that worked for CAFES and E-Fry that actually were against the policy and wanted to platform females and put them first and make sure that they were safe and accommodated them, they all got pushed out and replaced by trans activists. So now the women that work there, they have like a trans kid or a trans family member. So there's a conflict of interest and there's also a lot of bias. But I always tell this story, and I think it's hilarious. When I was in the halfway house, okay, so to go back a little bit, like I said, I was in and out of jail, and one of the times when I was in provincial jail, I met a girl there and we were cellmates, and I got out, but she went off to prison. And when she was in prison, she sent me a picture of herself, and I posted it on Facebook, and I tagged a bunch of the girls that were in with me, and somehow I tagged the location for Grand Valley Institution. And so when I was in the halfway, I didn't know this, but then when I was in the halfway house a few years later after I got out of prison, this woman named April Halley from Newfoundland messaged me, and I had no idea who she was. And she wanted to know about the prison policy, and she wanted to know about specific men that identified as women and were in women's prisons. And I read this message and I was like, this woman is nuts. Like, I'm not getting involved with this. I'm not answering her, da 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 da. And then after that conference, so like 5 months later, when I got back to Toronto, I actually went back into my message folder and I messaged April back. And I was like, what do you want to know? I will tell you everything. And by the way, Christopher Belmore, the guy you're asking me about, I actually live in the halfway house with him. So it was very ironic that had happened. And it was actually April who introduced me to the gender critical world and got me to speak out. So I'll be forever grateful for her. But that's definitely my experience with E-Fry and CAFES. And I'm a bit disappointed because after I started speaking about the transfer policy, they stopped asking me to speak on panels for them. So I wasn't doing advocating for women who were enduring strip searches or long periods of segregation or any of those things that are super important to me because they no longer wanted to be affiliated with me.
Wow, that's even more horrific than I anticipated, Heather. Honestly, I know Women's Rights Matter have been posting all month long for Women's History Month, have been posting. And the other day they posted about Elizabeth Fry, and it was so touching. And I thought back to their original intent and everything that they used to do. And I was just instantly so angry, just on behalf of the women that are now dealing with this. Unbelievable. I'm sorry, Amie, go ahead. Your hand's been up forever, hon.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to put up a sort of a marker to jump into the conversation a bit later, but because actually I've got a question from one of our cohort who is really under the weather, and also it's the wee hours of the morning by her. But before I do that, Bookish, can you talk a little bit about Elizabeth Fry and the Society for those of us south of our crazy top hat to the north, as you mention it? What exactly, what the story is there? Because I'm sorry, others may know, but I don't. I'm just getting it by inference.
Sorry,
Okay.
I muted myself. Oh my Lord. Anyway, she's actually originally from the UK, and she started, I believe it was in the 1800s, started noticing just the horrific conditions that women in prisons were living in, and really started becoming an advocate for women. And it developed into something that stayed in her name ever since, a society of, and it was always female driven, and they always advocated for better conditions in prisons for women. Again, things like halfway houses to help people assimilate back out of prison and things like that. Yeah, she did amazing work. And in her time, of course, people were often not even fed and the conditions were absolutely horrific. So she was really in the thick of that. And I mean, disease was rampant and it was just it was terrible. But now it's terrible for different reasons.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for that, Bookish. I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, it's a different but the same by comparison. But just to see some of the organizations in the U.S. that were supposed to lobby on behalf of women politically, like the National Organization for Women, which is really now Whoa Men. and Emily's List, which was a kind of lobbying, fundraising, candidate picking group for Democrats in the U.S. They've also gone completely TWAW. But Heather and Amy, let me just bring up this question from our friend Spiky, and I will just read that out to you, which will be much appreciated. And Amy, by the way, I love that phrase. I mean, love it in a sad way that we even have to have it, but trans supremacy hits the nail on the head. Here we go. Is there an international conversation happening between grassroots women that have experienced the reality of men in female prisons? And is there a lot of similarity? And I'll leave that for either of you or both of you. Thank you.
I just wanted to add to that Elizabeth Fry fought for sex segregation. So prior to all her advocacy, women were incarcerated with men. That's why you always hear people say she's probably rolling in her grave, because now the Elizabeth Fry societies are actually holding workshops and showing lawyers and people how to get men into women's prisons. So that's why everyone says she must be rolling in her grave. As the international aspect goes, we do talk to Keep Prison Single Sex UK and the US, and Jess from Australia. We definitely should be doing more, but I feel like every story or every person that I do talk to, it's the same. I feel like the US is a lot worse than any of the other countries, because as a lot of you know, Canada does have a clause in their policy that can prevent transfers from happening due to overriding health and safety concerns. But the trans activists are fighting to have that clause removed from the policy because they say it's rooted in transphobic views and a bunch of other nonsense. They would like to see that clause completely removed. So it is very similar internationally, and I will let Amy talk about the US, but I believe the US is probably the worst.
That's probably true. Thank you, Heather. Sorry, my service is going in and out, but the United States has a federal policy. So nationwide, there's a policy that prioritizes the self-perceived safety and well-being of trans-identified inmates in any given federal prison. And honestly, the stories that I have heard coming out of our federal prisons are a complete nightmare. I can't even, I mean, there's so many things that I don't share publicly because I don't want to traumatize people who haven't really looked evil in the face. So there's just things that are so heinous, they're unbelievable, that are occurring in the federal prisons, because when you're incarcerated in a federal prison, who can you ask for help? The feds? No, because you're in the feds. It was, purely by miracle that one woman was able to get in contact with me, and what happened to her required reconstructive surgery. She'll never be the same. And every woman in that prison who has been in there during the occurrence of these crimes is permanently damaged as well. These are things that people can't necessarily bounce back from, because this is, institutional trauma on every level. And the United States is not making any moves currently to help with this problem. It's like they're just exacerbating it every single day. We definitely have an uphill battle, but there's little, glimmers of hope here and there. I think actually there's a woman who is probably going to get, I think she will, she's going to get a seat in our California State Assembly. And her, one of her top priorities is to course correct and make sure that women are included as a protected class, and that they receive equal protection of the law. Because right now, like I said earlier, this is very much turning into trans supremacy across the board.
Wow. Listen, sorry, before I cede the floor to, because I see Testeria has her hand up, but just because it's related to Spikey's question, if I could just ask both of you or either of you again, at a national level, how is it in terms of women banding together across provinces and or states? Is that any more uh, hopeful, shall we say, than, trying to link up sisters across international boundaries?
Um, there has definitely been a lot more women stepping up and stepping forward to support women in prison. I'd say the one thing that you don't get a whole lot of women in prison that get out and then speak up or want to talk about it. Like most women who are in prison don't speak out because they're scared of being penalized for it. And then when they do get out, unfortunately, a lot of them return to addiction. So they kind of drop off the map. And also the ones that do get out and do good, they want to put that part of their lives behind them. They don't want to talk about it and be in the limelight. So it's hard to get women that have been incarcerated to band together. But I've been finding lately that there are a lot more women in Canada that are thinking about women in prison, because we're out of sight, we're out of mind. Women in prison are not people that anyone thinks about unless they know someone who's been incarcerated or they have a loved one that's incarcerated. We're just not thought about. So I am hopeful with seeing how many women and men that have been coming to the protests and supporting me in this for the last 5 years. And I forgot to mention too, Jess, she has the International Network of Incarcerated Girls and Women. We also have a website with a universal declaration on how women in prison should be treated internationally. I'll send you the link, Bookish, and maybe you can put it in the nest because I don't know how to do that.
Sure, you bet. I just wanted to quickly say too that one of the things I was aware of it, but again, there's so many issues with this that I was aware of it, but it wasn't really sinking in. And then I saw a live stream with Amie talking to women in prison live on the street. I think it was in N.A.A, if I'm not mistaken, but their stories from prison, from their own mouths. I was absolutely stunned. And that kind of is what brought it really full focus to me. Anyway, so I mean, I just can't say enough about both of you and your work. Tess, I think you're up first.
Thanks, Bookish. Hi, Heather. It was really a pleasure to meet you a couple of weeks ago. And it's good to see Amie here, too, because you two are my heroes, my sheroes. Heather, I meant to ask you a couple of weeks ago, because of your speech, you mentioned stamps being an issue. Is there a way that we can help women in prison by, I don't know, sending them stamps? Can they get their letters out without being edited? Are there other things that we could send them directly? Like I have books and I have a half a library that I need to get rid of. So I just wondered if there's a way we can help them communicate with them in some way, or just send them stamps so they can communicate to the outside world easier. I don't know. I'm just, yeah.
So you can't send them anything. Stamps you can't send because they're very security driven there. So they're worried about like drugs getting into the institution. So the only thing that you can do is write them letters. And even the letters, like you can't even like draw them a picture in crayon or pencil crayon because they're not allowed to have that either. So you can write letters to them. but you cannot send them anything. The only time that we're allowed to get anything in the institution is within the first 30 days that we're sent there. We get so many boxes and a list of things that we're allowed to have. But anyone can't just send those boxes. You need to be on a list. So even for phone calls, you have to be on a list and you have to be approved. So it's actually really, really hard to like communicate with the women because they have to call you. But in order for them to call you, they have to have you added to their PIN list. And then a guard has to call you and ask you if you're okay with them calling you. And then, of course, it costs them money. So when you're incarcerated, you're not entitled to any government money. So you can't get GST, Trillium, any of that type of stuff. And then you can have a job while you're working there. But unless you're a lifer or you have a very long sentence, the most that you're making is $5.80 a day. And you only get paid 5 days out of the week if you work full time. And then they take 30% of your wages for like room and board, cable, that type of thing. So you do not make a lot of money in there. And the money that you do make is usually going on stamps and time for your phone card. But like 80% of the women that are incarcerated are mothers to children under the age of 18. So then those phone calls and stamps are going to go towards communicating with our children. That's where pretty much all the time on my phone cards went to, was calling my kids when I was in there. So it's difficult because they don't have access to internet and they don't have email. Like I noticed that a lot of the prisons in the States, they allow email access, which is cool, but Canada doesn't have that yet.
Thanks, Heather. That's really disappointing to hear.
Yeah, really. Go ahead, Double Plus.
Hi, I just like to say, first of all, thank you to Amie and Heather for coming in and speaking with us. It's much appreciated. I think the work that you've been doing is absolutely phenomenal. And, I speak as a bloke, obviously. I find that absolutely disgusting, that there's men in women's prisons. And I can't believe that, well, as far as I'm concerned, I think we've made progress against gender identity when there are no men in women's prisons any place, in the world. And I'm just really grateful for the work you're doing about that. I had a question for Amie. I don't really, I live in the UK, I live in Scotland. And I don't really understand this because for me, I see this as, it looks like cruel and unusual punishment to me, which would be an Eighth Amendment issue as far as I understand. Is there any chance that this is going to be challenged under that, Amie?
I don't know. Amie, is your connection okay? Just wondering if there's going to be any legal challenges that you're aware of.
Thank you so much. Yes, I just finally, my service came back. Sorry about that. Legal challenges.
No worries.
You mean like new lawsuits?
Well, I just sorry.
Because I'm really trying to get some new lawsuits initiated because there are some women who have filed formal complaints recently for the rapes that did happen to them. And in order to file lawsuits, they have to completely exhaust the administrative remedies in a complaint before they can file. Most women have been too afraid of retaliation to do this. So now that there's a couple that have come forward, I really want to take as good a care of them as possible and get them great legal teams in order to prove to them that it wasn't in vain and that they didn't do it for nothing, and that there really are lawyers and people out here who will fight the good fight with them. Someone just suggested to, start a fundraiser to cover the cost of lawyers, which I've been dragging my feet on because I'm so scared of money. But I will. I'll do that by the end of the weekend just to get the legal fund up and running for the women who are safe enough and confident enough to come forward.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Amie. Our duty. Hi. Go ahead.
Hi. Hi. I just wanted to come in, and there was something that Emmy said earlier that I was going to touch on, but I think I've forgotten. But I do want to come in and say that we do focus more on children and adolescents affected by gender ideation and their parents, but we do realize that women in prisons with men is an issue that is super important and awful. It is yet another side effect of the radical trans movement, and quote gender identity. So we just want to recognize, I just want to recognize on behalf of Our Duty Canada that we sympathize greatly with what's going on with women in prisons with men. And then one little side thing, I'm not sure if others feel this, but there are laws in Canada that are very tight on speech, uh, and it's coming to laws that might be put in place that would be very tight on intent to speak, intent for hate speech, that carry huge um, punishments, including up to life in prison, as it is proposed by the government at the moment. And so these things for activist women in this fight as well, I believe that might be a big fear, that we will end up in prison for trying to protect our children, and not only that, end up in prison with men. But that was a side point. My main point is that we we are, we do, most of our posts are to do with maybe the laws and women, or sorry, maybe the laws and children and adolescents and their families, but we definitely support the fight that Emmy and Heather are involved in, and we commend them. And I just wanted to say all of that.
Well, thank you for that. That's lovely. Go ahead, Swallow.
Hi. Gosh. You know what? I'm gonna wait because I'm sorry. I'm actually really choking up a little bit just from thinking about this. There are days that I can kind of put it away, and then I hear you guys talking about it, and I have a question, but I'm just gonna wait until I pull myself together. I'm sorry. Thank you.
No worries. Just hang on until you are ready.
I
Pop
actually
your
have
hand up again
something.
and we'll be good.
I actually, and this kind of goes along with how Swallow's feeling right now. How are the women that are currently incarcerated that you're in contact with? We lost Amie. Hopefully she'll be back. So Heather, the women that you're in contact with, how are they doing? Because I obviously not every woman who is in prison is vocalizing their not happiness about what's going on and stuff. But how is the morale? How are things going?
I think it's different with a lot of them. Some just stick to their room and don't go out, therefore they don't have to deal with it. Others are walking on eggshells, are scared, because they're like, I talked to a few women that are still inside, and they talk about being uncomfortable or feeling threatened. They just want to get out of there. They don't want to stir up anything. A lot of them feel like they're second class. So the men that are in there, they get away with whatever they want and there's no repercussions for them. They describe it as they're untouchable. So they definitely feel like they're like second class there. And if they do speak up or say anything, they're just called transphobic. So there's a lot of mixed emotions around it. And then there's obviously women who have been in physical fights with some of them. So they feel scared that they're going to end up having something really bad happen to them. And then there's also women that have been sexually assaulted that are scared as well, right? So, and then you do have some of the women that it doesn't bother them at all. So there is definitely a mix of like the emotions and the thoughts of the women inside. I find that a lot of them have just kind of given up on doing or saying anything. Like, I've told people before, like the one time when Hark sexually assaulted an Indigenous woman in the bathroom at Grand Valley, when the other women found out that it had happened, they locked him out of their house and he went to the guards, and the guards came and told the women that they had to let him in the house or they were going to put bullying in their paperwork. And our paperwork's very important when we go for parole. So if you have like things written in there that you're a bully or bad things, then it could prevent you from getting parole. So a lot of the women just don't want to cause any problems for themselves because, like I said, a lot of them are moms and they just want to get out and see their kids. So they feel like their hands are tied.
Wow. I just want to say that Amie took off to run down the hill and see if she can get better service because her service kept cutting out. So she should be rejoining us here shortly, hopefully. And the other thing that I wanted to say to that is that I really feel like that's why this needs to be our fight on their behalf. This is not something that they should have to deal with from inside or even try to have to deal with from inside. This needs to be our fight as women on their behalf. And
Well,
we just need to figure it out.
yeah, and Our Duty Canada made a really good point because if these laws pass through, then quite a few of us are looking at jail time. So we need to care about what's going on there because that's where we possibly could be sitting and dealing with this exact issue, right?
Yeah, and I know we've joked about it to a certain extent because it's just so frightening, but it's not funny in the least. And I know in Scotland, their hate speech law, which is not quite as intense as ours, but theirs comes into effect on April 1st. So I think that really is going to be a good kind of portent of what's to come for us if this thing goes through. Now, mind you, the one in Canada is much more far-reaching in the sense that it will go back into the past. Doesn't matter. You could delete every hateful thing you ever said. Not that I'm going to, but you could delete everything hateful thing you've said, and they could still use it against you. And like Heather was saying, they can actually go into the future if they feel that you're likely to still hate on in the future. You can get everything from an ankle monitor to a jail sentence. So it is extremely authoritarian and frightening here. I did post the letter that Our Duty is circulating right now. Please, Canadian people, sign it. Send it to everybody that you know and get signatures on that bad boy. Sorry, Emmy, did you have your hand up before? I missed.
I did, but it was actually it was a variation on Testeria's question, but it was for Amie. So I will put a pin in that until she reconnects to Wi-Fi or wherever she gets a connection.
Okay, sounds good. So Heather, what can we do right now? I mean, who should we be lobbying? What should we be doing? Like, is there kind of a hierarchy of things that we can do that might be impactful?
So you can definitely come out to the protests. You like the more people that come out, then people realize that there is a group of people that aren't afraid to speak up for what they believe in. We always have a really good reception by going and protesting. We hand out flyers and infographics and like all sorts of things to like raise awareness. And like it's those one-on-one conversations that are really important because we need to let people know what's happening, but we also need to change public opinion. Like when I first got into this, I was all like gung ho on, oh, I'm just going to write all the MPs and let them know what's going on because they'll realize this is wrong and they'll speak up and say something. And how wrong I was. I sent a letter to every single MP and most of them just ignored me, or the ones that got back to me were like, oh, sorry, you're not in my riding, so I don't have time to meet with you. And a few of them did meet with me, but it they agreed with me, but they weren't going to do anything on their own. They want me to do something, and it's like, okay, but you're the one that has like the power and the resources and the money. Like you want me to do all of these things, and it's like I don't have the financial means to be able to do what you want me to do. And I just realized that most of them too weren't willing to put their neck on the line. So it was really discouraging dealing with MPs, but I think that if people write their MPs, that the MP might be more willing to listen to you since you're in their riding, because you're the one that's going to be voting for them. But really, it's just changing public opinion, protesting, doing banner drops, and talking to your family and friends or people that are around. I talk to anybody that I possibly can to tell them about what's going on because there's so many people that are still so shocked and don't believe that this is happening.
Yeah, I can believe that. Hi, Maureen, go ahead.
Hi everyone. I just wanted to say too that if there's anyone that's thinking about going out and doing it, what's the thing that will get you up off your couch, as I always say. And my reason for going out with Heather the very first time a couple years ago was when I heard about the man in Parry Sound, that's a small town north of Toronto, a couple hours north, who was let into a women's shelter and he sexually assaulted a woman in there. And I just when I can literally remember sitting on my couch reading it and thinking, no, I just can't. I cannot read one more of these and not do something. And so I reached out to her and said, I want to get involved, in your next one. Where is it? And, went down on Yonge Street. That's our busiest street in our city. And I protested with them. And now it's like, it's actually empowering. You actually feel like you are doing something as opposed to just, and I'm not saying that, of course, Twitter counts. It obviously counts because we're all here. But to get in person, it does several things. One of the most is that it feels like you're doing something. But to get around other women who are doing it with you empowers you to want to do it more and again. And so I can't stress to you enough that it's not like, sure, it's a little bit, you're a bit nervous before you get there, but within 30 seconds, you're talking to somebody and then you're holding a sign and then you're, yelling out slogans and then you're talking to somebody one-on-one. And, then you go and have a lovely meal afterwards and you talk about everything and you become part of a movement. And we are a movement on Twitter, but it's one facet of the movement. The other facet, which politicians would pay attention to, like Heather just said, is to be out there, if you can. And the thing is, the reason why I started there was that I thought, who can say no to this? Who's going to say to anyone in my friends or my family or people I work with, how could you be out there what, I can't hold a sign that says no males in female jails? So if there was something that you needed, that one thing that you felt you could stand behind, that nobody would say something to you, it's definitely this issue. So I just urge anybody who can get out there to get out there. You'll get more out of it than you give. I really, really promise you that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Maureen. That's great. And Heather, I did, before we go to the hands, just wanted to say, you had mentioned before, and I know Maureen and I have talked about this as well, that you don't get a lot of counter protests at your protests, and you have a theory about why that is. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so like I said, we've done like over 20 protests, and they don't come. I seem to think that it is because it's the prison issue, and they don't want people to know what's going on in prison. So they know if they show up to counter protest, that's going to draw the attention of the media, and it's going to draw attention of the public more. And if the public and the media and other people hear what we're saying, then they're scared that they're going to realize what's going on and they're not going to agree with them. That's what I seem to think it is. They don't want people to know what's going on in prison, because anyone who hears about this, they know that it's not right and they don't agree with it. Like if you talk to any sane person, they're like, oh, of course not. You would no, you don't do that. So they don't want people to know that this is going on. They want people to think that no, it's not going on. And also, what type of argument could you have? Like the government released documents that say 44% of men who identify as women under CSC care are sex offenders. 86% are in for violent crimes. 94% of the men who identify as women who committed sex crimes did so as their biological sex. Therefore, they started identifying as women after they committed the sex offense. Like no sane person is going to hear those things and then agree with the counter protesters. So I believe it's a way to keep it silent and not let people know what's going on.
100%. Emmy, you have a question for Amie, and she's back.
Oh, that's okay. I think we had another hand up, so I don't want to take over the floor. Maybe Dr. Moded, and then I can jump in.
Go ahead, Doc. Okay, I don't know if he can hear, maybe.
Okay, maybe he's having technical difficulties. Amie, then while we're here, listen, I saw you had posted the other day you were looking for book ideas for a particular woman you had in mind. And so just building on what Testeria had asked Heather before, what can we do in the States? I know Testeria was asking regarding Canada, like about stamps and different things like that. What's the situation in the US if you want to, do something for women in prison? What are we allowed to do as strangers?
It's a lot more liberal than I thought. What Heather described is pretty restrictive. It sounds incredibly impressive. And I know as far in California, you can
I am so
send.
sorry. Were you guys waiting
Oh,
for me? I am so sorry. Hello, everyone. My name is
No,
Doctor.
we'll just let them finish this, and then you can go, okay?
Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't hear anything. Yes.
so in California, you can send mail, you can send stamps, you can send cards that are in white envelopes that aren't heavily decorated, not excessive amount of glitter because they're gonna think that it's drugs. You can send quarterly packages to women. I know that sounds kind of funny, but usually after I get reports of someone being assaulted, I'll reach out to their roommates, see if they've gotten a quarterly package yet, see if there's something that I can do special just to be a, temporary distraction from what they're going through. Something as simple as a package that has a lot of goodies and, new socks, maybe a pair of shoes is something that means a lot more inside than it would to us out here. Again, with the books, also you can order books via Amazon and send them in, but you do have to be in touch with someone inside, which sometimes I'm hesitant to do just because I feel like I need to protect all parties involved. And a lot of the women that I am in contact with are serving life sentences, and it's a big commitment. I don't want to set anybody up for disappointment. So um, usually I say just send it to me and I'll send it to them. But if there's anybody specifically who would like to independently reach out, I can always do my best to connect people one to one with pen pals or women that would be, compatible as friends.
Thanks, Amy. And listen, if on the question of books, because I know you had one specific person in mind the other day, but just for example, to something that might not be obvious to us, not familiar with that experience ourselves, what kind of books do you find are more popular or more helpful compared to books to avoid? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot we can imagine, but just out of curiosity.
Well, I got a lot of really great feedback from Kara Dansky's books. I sent both of them in to one of the honor dorms, and they were just head over heels, totally excited, messaging me saying, "We're TERFs now." It was very encouraging. The need and the desire is there to learn, and I do my best to send in books to really empower and encourage them. Uh, so I do want them to get hip to the fact that we don't have a whole lot of women's rights, even though it feels like, or it seemed like we do. We really don't. And if anybody should know, it's them. So anything that's mildly educational but empowering is what I generally try and focus on. Nobody's ever, told me they didn't like anything. I sent Abigail Schreier's book in there, to at least 5 copies of that one, just because they're so limited on the amount of information and news that they are able to get. I want to keep them up on game on current events regarding uh, things that directly affect us as women.
Thank you, Amy.
Wow, that would be a great project. Would be getting books together for Amy to be able to send, even if we don't have the personal connections. I would love to do that. Any other questions or comments? Dr. Maud, I see you're back.
Yes, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt Amy. I just couldn't hear anything. But yeah, I had to close the app and open it back up, and I was able to hear a little bit of her at the
Yeah, no
end.
worries. Twitter gremlins, eh? Or X, I guess.
You're right. Hello everyone. My name is Maret. I do understand that the problem is the transgender people invading women's private spaces. Um, well, first of all, this cannot be men versus women because not all men, we're not all like that. But what I bring to the table is that I recently decoded and wrote a book explaining transsexuality, how it works in the mind mentally. And I posted up a link to my book. I've had a lot of resistance bringing out my book because obviously, as you can tell, they're going one direction and they're trying to stop anybody that comes in between their agenda. But what I wanted to say is that in order to have power countering all this indoctrination and all this movement, we need to bring facts and information, being able to elaborate on how that mentality works and prove once and for all that these people are not born in the wrong gender and they are actually heterosexuals using transsexuality to satisfy their own biological heterosexuality. This is what I talk about in my book, and I'll give you a quick example of what I talk about.
Wait,
During
hold on. We're only here for 2 hours. So I appreciate it. You can drop it down in the comments, but if you have a question for Amie, because we do have people waiting.
Okay, no. All right, thanks a lot. Bye.
Did you have a question?
Go ahead,
Okay,
our
guess
duty.
not.
I was just going to say, Dr. Moded, I believe, did touch on something really important, and it's about kind of getting the mindset. So we all know that the WPATH files have come out recently, and that is a huge tool that I hope that everybody shares as widely as possible. The one thing that one of the people that I work with on another project said, and it's very valid, very relevant, is that the way to approach this issue from many different directions would be from a political point of view. And I'm not gonna get it right as well as she says it, but the point is that we can prove, that's what he said, something about like being able to prove um, where the mindset is coming from. We can prove from the queer and woke and trans radical literature, all of it that's been put out, like by WPATH and all of the other organizations that have been led by WPATH over the years. We can prove that it is a it is a political ideology. It is a political movement, and they're quite proud of it being a political movement. So I just wanted to, it just touched on me to maybe put it out there that a really good way to kind of tweak the things that you put out there that desire um, uh, movement on this issue might come from that kind of political stance, using their own words through their literature as proof of that. It can't be denied at that point. That's all I had to say.
I just wanted to hop in real quick because something just occurred to me that this is one of our most vulnerable groups of women, that in the women in the psychiatric care as well, because it's an uncomfortable conversation even in the best of times. So people have a tendency when things are uncomfortable to, that blind spot comes in or goes away. And I think that kind of goes to it, Heather's point of not being protested. It would be really hard to keep that blind eye up. And it's an uphill battle. And I think it, just like Booker said, it's imperative that we be the voice for these women, and the gathering of, but getting books together. I'm love this idea. So we're gonna have to talk about this idea after the space. So I'm very excited. I think we could pull this off.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that we can't send anything to uh, Canadian prisoners, but we need to be active on the outside for sure. I know Turf Mill has a strategy that she uses really effectively, which is she phones her MP, she phones her MLA, she phones everybody under the sun, and she really develops a relationship with the women who, it always tends to be women who are managing the offices of the MPs and the MLAs and the politicians. And she develops a relationship with them and makes them aware of the issues that she's concerned about. And I do wonder if that may not have an effect on, like, I think then it gets discussed within the office. It's not always the same person. And so she's got now with the Premier's office of Alberta, she's got a real relationship with the women who answer that phone and pass on messages to the Premier and to the appropriate people in that department, and does the same thing federally as well, and really finds that effective. So if you are not, as Maureen said, able to, get out there in public, that may be a way in to have that actual conversation with somebody. Write letters, absolutely, but we have to get all of this stuff on the record and especially while we can, because we have no idea what the future is going to hold as far as communication in Canada, that's for sure. Sorry, something went down the wrong pipe there. Anyway, anybody questions or comments from anyone else?
Well, I have another question.
Yeah, go.
Because we lost Amie when I was asking this. I was asking Heather how the morale of the women inside who are incarcerated are doing. Because one of the first spaces I ever went to, I believe, was you, and it was a call with Tamika Johnson. And from that moment on, I knew this had to be a priority. And just like being harassed while she was trying to be on the call. She, it was just crazy. I think I'm bad luck. If I try to talk to Amie, she drops from the space.
Yep, we lost her again. Okay, you. Senna, you came up. Did you have a question?
I did. And just to add to that conversation, which I had to miss out on just a bit because I was clicking into the space, but Amy's mic, yes, it's been clicking right from the beginning. And I thought, should I jump in and say something? Like something's not quite right with that connection. But
Yeah, no, she knows she ran down the hill to try and get a better one. So
I heard that.
I think
thought, oh,
I'm sorry, ladies. I think it's fixed now. And then yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm at the bottom of the hill. It's fixed now.
yeah, no worries. You don't have to apologize for anything. Anyway,
no,
Peach had a
never.
question for you that she's been trying to ask a couple of times now, but every time she speaks, we lose you. So we're going to let her try one more time.
Third time is the charm. I was just wondering how the morale was for the women that you're in contact with who are incarcerated with this situation. The ones that are being vocal with you about how they're not comfortable with it.
Well, more of them are starting to speak out and speak up and reach out with really legitimate requests, like just straight up, I need a lawyer. Tamika is doing really well. Of course, it's difficult for her because she is one of the only ones who is so vocal about how wrong this is. And being that she is former Highway Patrol, uh, it's difficult because she's probably better at doing the staff's jobs than they are. So I think some of them are a little intimidated by her, and it just makes it that much more difficult. But she's working on some projects to stay busy. She's getting more offers to write pieces for different publications, which is amazing. But overall, I think the women are it's kind of at the precipice of something. They're kind of pensive. They're not too sad, but they don't want to get too happy. But there was kind of a breakthrough recently. They do have a Fox News app on their state issued tablets, and they were able to see the article that Fox picked up right after I did the podcast with Riley Gaines on Gaines for Girls, and they read the article, they saw, and I think it was exactly what I had been hoping for, just to show them that we're really out here, we really are talking about it, because it is difficult for me to. There's over 3,000 women, so I can't send a personal message to all of them, but this definitely got the word out. The downside about that is that the rest of the population saw too. So I'm having to tell like key players to be on high alert, and the people who are in touch with me to be more vigilant in their daily routines, because I am very concerned about what the counter attack is going to be in regards to them seeing that interview on their apps.
Our duty, go ahead.
Okay, so one of the things that we do or that we recommend for the parents of kids who are affected by gender ideation is to talk to them openly, honestly, if they can. So that's kind of a process because you kind of have to get over that threshold where you can actually have a conversation without having just complete backlash and complete shutting down. One of the things, personally, I'm also a parent affected with a child affected by this. One of the things that I have spoken with my daughter about is the women in prisons with men issue, and I have told her that the majority of these men are either, in my opinion, okay, this is my opinion and my personal thing, they're either AGPs who want to get into women's spaces, or they are men who want a nice, light, fluffy ride through prison. One of those two, primarily. But my question for Heather and Amie is, excuse me, sorry, if I'm going to have that conversation with my child, is there anything that you can tell me that 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 might give me a bit more factual information, or a bit more confidence in having that conversation with her, because I'm not as familiar with that as you guys are, of course.
So I think you're right about your opinion on who's in there, but it's also men who have sex crimes because they're not safe in men's prisons. If you have violence against women or children, or we call them diddlers or rape hounds, or we say they have skin beefs, that's the lingo for being in jail and having those types of crimes, you are not okay. You are not safe. You're going to get beat up. You're going to get hurt. So essentially you go. So I heard something very interesting one time when I asked somebody why they were in PC. So there's GP and PC. GP is your general population, and your PC is protective custody. And they said, why be a peasant among kings when you can be a king among peasants? And it made a lot of sense to me, because if you have sex crimes and you're in a men's prison, you're a peasant among kings. But if you're in a woman's prison, you're now the king among peasants because you're stronger, and you have all of these things that make you more frightening and more overbearing and aggressive, and the women aren't going to fight you. So you're a king there, right? And you also get special privilege. So I find that it's a lot of sicko men that are trying to, yes, have an easier time, but also gain access to women and also our children, because we have the mother-child program. So our children that are 4 years and under live with us full time. So they're gaining access to their victim pools. I think that the prison conversation is kind of difficult to have with children. Like I have a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old. My 12-year-old kind of gets it. My 9-year-old, I think she's still a little too young to wrap her head around it all. My son shows a lot of interest and is always asking me questions, so it's easier to talk to him about these things. But these are things that you want to protect your children from, so it's hard to have that type of open, honest conversation with them. I don't know how I would approach it to make it easier. But I think, yeah, just being honest with her about who it is that is trying to get in and what they're trying to do. because, it's so obvious seeing it in prison because these are men who have been convicted of these crimes. So the type of people they are. But there are so many people in society that are the same that haven't been charged. And that's why we have such issues with our women's shelters and our washrooms and our locker rooms and our change rooms, because the people that have not been incarcerated or charged yet are still in public, and those are the ones that want access to all these spaces. No normal man would ever want in our spaces. They just wouldn't, unless they were up to something nefarious. I didn't really answer your question there, but I tried.
You did. And I just wanted to say that this would not be a typical situation and it would not be necessarily a 100% typical recommendation that we would make to our parents. I was lucky enough to be able to break through that conversation barrier with my child early, and she is 16. She's at an age that I can talk to her. So there are a lot of factors that go into the types of conversations that we can have and the ways that we can have them with our kids. So I just wanted to say that we're not recommending this particular conversation necessarily to everyone on an age appropriate level, of course. But anyway, just wanted to say that. And I'm sorry I took up the mic again.
I think I have something that might be appropriate for a 16-year-old. If you cut off a rapist's arm, they're still a rapist. And if you cut off their penis, they're still a rapist. I have a specific situation where a woman in federal prison was among 4 victims who were brutally raped by a post-op trans-identified person. This woman had to have reconstructive vaginal and anal surgery. She was neglected and refused medical attention by staff for so long that by the time she did make it to the hospital, the doctor was so horrified at what he was looking at and what he was dealing with. He just passed her the phone and said, please call whoever you need to call, because she wasn't able to use the phone without getting cut off because staff would end her phone calls. This woman, it took me so long to find lawyers that would go visit her and work with her. It was like one of the hardest things ever, and one of the most important things to me that I've ever been responsible for. But this is part of the reason why this is a difficult topic, because this was committed by a post-op trans person who, the federal prisons did end up releasing after they transferred. No charges were ever filed. And this is what is happening more and more often. These crimes are going unreported, and there are no consequences at all for this category of people, inside, outside. It just seems like they're above the law. And that situation is, I would use it for a lot of things because it's an absolute nightmare. And of all the stories I've witnessed and experiences that I have had, that is by far the worst. And I really wasn't expecting it out of such a conservative area. But the bottom line is, it doesn't matter what you do physically, whatever you try and change about your body, you still are who you are. And if you're a sex offender, you're more than likely going to die a sex offender.
It's so true, Amie. Like, one of our biggest predators in the women's prisons was Matthew Harks, who's a prolific serial pedophile, and he has had surgery. But he doesn't need his penis to cause harm. The only thing that having your penis removes from the situation is pregnancy after rape. You still have your hands, you still have your tongue, you still have other objects. And he had no problem violating women in prison. And the thing that I find with a lot of them too is that they go after women who are like developmentally delayed, or have severe mental health issues. that can barely take care of themselves because they're easy prey to them. And the one thing that frustrates me the most inside too is we have this thing called the structured living unit. We call it the SLE, and it has like behavioral counselors, and basically there's like 24/7 like observation. This is where all the women who need help doing like their daily activities and just showering, being told to shower every day. So if one of these men get in trouble, they're usually sent to segregation for like 24 hours, and then they're let back out and they're put in the SLE. And now they have access to the most vulnerable women on all of the compound. And it frustrates me so much because they're the ones that end up being the victims. And they can't even really express themselves, you know? Like some of them are like 13 years old. Like not literally, but in like developmentally. And they're the ones that are the victims most of the time. So you don't need a penis to be a danger to women. And what I've found too with not a lot, but quite a few cases so far too, is that these men have no hope of ever getting out of prison. They can't get parole. They can't behave. And so what they're doing is they're going through with surgery. Therefore, they know for the rest of their lives that they will always be around women. Because once you've had surgery, you are now technically a poor, vulnerable trans woman, right? Um, and that's what they do. So, okay, I'm never getting out of prison. Well, then you're going to keep me locked up with women.
Real quick before Tess goes, I just wanted to ask, um, have you guys considered ever doing like some form of like a monthly newsletter, but it was just a place for the women to write letters to talk about their stories, not just even with just the trans stuff, but maybe if there was like a place that, because if getting people invested in these women is key to getting the, more and more attention to it. And I just thought that if there was somewhere that we could check in with, and that would also give the women an outlet. They could write them anonymously or whatever. I just wanted to put that out there. That just popped into my head.
We actually just started a newsletter a couple maybe the first of the year. We put out a couple of editions and it's available on the website. And we did ask the ladies if they would like to start sending in submissions, because we will publish their stuff without altering it to our own political agendas like everybody else. But we'll actually, I'll talk to my partners and see if we could get more of their voices restored and have a whole page of the newsletter dedicated specifically to that. That's a very good idea.
Yeah, I like that idea. I definitely want to start doing more, and that would be a good idea. Getting them to just submit poems or drawings, or because it's been hard to get letters from them about any of this gender identity stuff because all their mail gets read before it gets sent out, and they're scared to write these things and then get in trouble. So the only time your letters are not read before they leave are if they're sent to a lawyer. So it's definitely been hard to get them to agree to write about any of the stuff that's been happening in there, but I think it would be a good idea to help just promote their artwork and their poems and all their creativity.
I love that idea. Tess, you have a question or a comment?
Yes, thanks. I came in late, so I apologize if this issue has been brought up. But when I heard Amie speak about a woman needing reconstructive surgery. I wasn't going to ask the question to Heather about this, but then she brought up the mother and child unit, so I will. A few years ago, I would pique people one-on-one by talking about Adam Labakan, or Lubicon, however you pronounce his name, and what he did to that baby. Now I use what's going on in schools as an in, and then I pivot to what's going on in prisons all around the Western world, and I use him as an example. You brought up the mother and child unit, Heather. Could you expand upon that and if you don't want to speak directly about him, more generally, what these women are facing in the mother and child unit with men like him? Thanks.
Yeah, so we have 6 women's prisons across Canada, and they all have a mother-child program. Typically, you have to be down to minimum security in order to participate in that program. But there are prisons that will allow it to happen on medium compound. So what they do is they typically take, I guess most of you don't know this, in women's prisons, medium and minimum is not like a cell. You live in like pods or houses, like cottage style houses. So they'll have like 9 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a living room, a laundry room, a dining room, and a kitchen. You make your own food. The knives are chained to the wall. There are no cameras. The guards come through once every 2 hours. So you make your own food. You get yourself up with an alarm clock. It's very different than provincial jail or maximum security. So these men live in these houses with us. So typically they'll take one of the houses on the compound and they'll turn it into the mother-child house. And the mothers that have their children will live in that one specific place. So Adam, also known as Tara de Souza, probably saying that wrong, he is Canada's youngest dangerous offender, and he actually he raped a 3-month-old baby and caused so much damage that it had to have reconstructive surgery. And then he mutilated himself and ate his own flesh. That's who Tess is referring to. He's incarcerated at Fraser Valley for women. And there is a few women that I've been in touch with that have had their children there, and they weren't told about Adam. They felt extremely uncomfortable. They felt that their babies weren't safe having him there. He would antagonize the mothers, stand outside the mother-child house. Same with Matthew Harks when he was at Fraser Valley. And the mothers can't say or do anything because if you get a charge or you get in trouble, they can take your child from you. So they're not going to risk losing their child. And Adam actually beat up a woman who had called him out for stalking the mother-child house. And he beat the living crap out of her. And nothing was done. And one of the women there said to the guard, like, why didn't you do anything? And they're like, well, she shouldn't have called him a pedophile. And it's like, well, he is a pedophile, and that's what he would be called in the community. But you're going to penalize her for calling something what it is. So there have been issues around that. And it's unfortunate that the women can't say or do anything out of fear of losing their child. So that's a big thing that they have to keep them quiet about things as well. But I remember talking to the one mom, and she went to like this, they have different events and get-togethers, like they celebrate like Black History Month or Chinese New Year, and they have different groups in prison that you can join and be a member of. And they had this event, and she went to the event and had her baby, and one of the guards went up to her and said, don't let anyone hold your child. Just so you know, there's somebody here who has crimes against a child about your child's age, and they haven't seen a baby in a long time, and we don't know how they're going to act. And the guard was referring to Adam. And she sat in the corner the whole time and just wanted to leave.
That is just unbelievable. It's horrible.
All I can say is I don't have enough emojis to express how fucking pissed off I am about that. I already knew that, my God, I just want to light everything on fire at this point.
Yeah, I think it's the stuff of friggin' nightmares. It's unbelievable. So we just have to take it on, and we have to start doing more, and that's just all there is to it. These women are not in a position to fight for themselves, and we have to take it on.
What do you guys have going on? What is the rest of 2024 looking like for the both of you?
You mean in regards to advocacy or?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to plan another protest in Toronto. I would like to get across the country and plan some, but obviously it's costly since Canada is so big. But I would like to do more protests, and also reach out to more women. I was talking to a woman in Quebec, actually, so 2 weeks ago at the International Women's Day event that we had, some women from Quebec, PDF Quebec, they had come and they really wanted to know how we could work together better, because they feel a little excluded and they feel like we're excluded from Quebec because of the language barrier. And it really got me thinking, yeah, they are. We're all English and they're French, and we really should be working together with them. And we need to start finding women who are bilingual and can translate things so that we can get the message across to all of Canada, because Quebec is a big province and they've been doing a lot of really good work, and we miss out on that work because we can't speak French or we can't understand French. And I think that 2024 that I'm going to start trying to work with the Quebec women more. I want to put out, I did a survey about 3 years ago now, where I offered an honorarium to women for filling out a survey about their experience in prison. And it really lacked a perspective from the Quebec women, because obviously, again, the language barrier. So I want to work with the Quebec women and do a survey directed at Quebec to try to find some contacts there and find out how the women in Quebec are with dealing with this policy and how they're being impacted. I would like to really give Quebec a voice this year, because I feel like they deserve it, and it makes me kind of sad because I never really thought about it until they brought it up 2 weeks ago. So I definitely want to make more of an effort to include them.
I think that's great, actually. Swallow, do you think you're ready to talk yet, or just wondering, because we will be wrapping up in another 10 minutes or so. So we'd love
Wait,
to hear
hold
from
on.
you if you can.
I want to hear Amy's answer to that.
I had my phone away from me. Yes, and thank you. I want to let somebody else go first, just because my hands are full for
Sure,
90 more seconds.
sure. Actually,
Thank you.
I missed Amy's answer on that. Sorry.
No problem. The rest of the year for me and my little team of 3, we kind of don't know yet. We just made a really big, our first presentation or our first pitch of any sort to the Board of Supervisors in my county for funding for a reentry program. This is not what I wanted to do. This is not the direction I wanted to go, but this opportunity was available, and I felt like there's no way we couldn't try and pitch a plan to the county to try and get specific housing for women who spent extended periods of time in prison to reenter. That would also provide employment for formerly incarcerated women. That is kind of up in the air, and it'll depend on what the response is from that to see what direction we're going to go. But other than that, my biggest priority is, again, lawyers, making those connections, connecting them with the women who are ready for representation, and continuing to encourage, educate, and empower these women so that they can be in a position to start defending themselves with formal complaints, lawsuits, and just generally standing up to them for themselves and knowing the truth, because they have no idea what's going on out here. So every time I send them in an article, every time I send them a picture of Heather protesting, they're just mind blown, because they don't think there's anybody out here doing anything. I send them in pictures of protests at the Golden Gate Bridge, and they're shocked because they have no idea that we're out here and so many of us care. So that's a big deal to me too, keeping them informed and being more inclusive. Like Heather said, I want to definitely include them in their own fight, because they do need the encouragement, and it's always rewarding to get the feedback as well. So I need it just as much as they do.
Okay. Swallow, are you with us? Or are we?
I am
No.
with you.
Okay. Go ahead, then.
Sorry, I was just feeding the cats. My question is, I don't want to, I don't want to take the focus too much off of the incarcerated women, because, obviously, for obvious reasons, they need to be our priority. But I also, when this comes up, I think about the female guards, because, many of them, as I understand it, and I'm certainly not an expert in this area, but many of them, as I understand it, did not sign up for having to do things like strip searching men. And I'm just wondering if we know anything about them and what's happening to them. And I'm wondering, I would imagine that they must be unionized. And I mean, I guess I'm just wondering what the zeitgeist is, if you guys know, among the, the women who are, they've built their career, they're supporting their families, and then all of a sudden now, to keep their jobs, they're having to put hands on men, who I imagine many of those men really enjoy it and make it terrible for them. So, I mean, that was my question, and I'm sorry I choked up before. This is hard stuff. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, so the female guards, a lot of them don't want to do it. They are unionized, so they don't really get to say anything. My first experience of a man incarcerated with us was actually in provincial jail back in 2015. I had a laundry job doing the men's laundry, and I used to be taken off range Monday to Friday. And I would be brought down to A&D, and I'd be strip searched and then brought to the laundry room. And then when I was done my laundry job, I'd be brought back to A&D and strip searched again. So I actually got to know the guards that worked there quite well. Obviously, they were strip searching me quite a bit. And also, I'd be walking with them alone through the jail to get to laundry. And there was a guy named Christopher Webster from London, Ontario, extensive history of sex crimes, that was incarcerated across the hall from us. The guards used to complain about him all the time. They said that he was there hiding from the men, that he was pretending to be a woman, and that he would get an erection every time they would strip search him. And they felt extremely uncomfortable and did not want to strip search him. And this one guard who, she actually has a place in my heart because she was super, super nice to us, treated us like human. And I actually stayed in contact with her when I got out. She's not doing very well, unfortunately. But she complained, and she loved us women. She always went above and beyond for us, always brought us treats and all sorts of things. And she loved working with women. That was her favorite thing. And she complained about happening to strip search Chris and how he was getting an erection and she didn't feel comfortable. And they actually moved her over to the men's side to discipline her for speaking out about men who identified as women because she wasn't treating all women the same. So they are disciplined for speaking out about it. And they can't be public either out of fear of, being fired. There are women who are on leave because they were injured by a male who identifies as a woman. There's also a workplace case maybe 2 years ago now where a female guard was forced to watch a male who would not have surgery over camera the entire time. And she has a history of trauma and abuse as well. And she had to watch him masturbate. And they wouldn't let her leave her post. She really didn't want to do that. And it was causing her distress. And so, it is happening. And I do feel bad for them because they didn't sign up for this and it's their job and they need their job, like they need this job to support their families and themselves too. So I do know that it is an issue for female guards as well. And I wish that more would speak up. But the ones that are speaking up are retired now. So they don't have to worry about getting in trouble at work.
Wow, that is absolutely crazy. Go ahead, Amie. Tell us about the U.S.
I was just going to agree with everything Heather just said. There was word that the female officers at some point about a year ago were ready to file a lawsuit, but I don't think anything ever came of it. They are unionized in California, and it is the biggest union in the state of California. They don't really say anything. There was actually a man who was just released back into general population who grabbed a nurse's breast, and they put him into administrative segregation in the SHU and just released him again, like without consequence. So it's very undeniable. It's very clear how these laws are completely anti-woman, whether it's an incarcerated woman, a nurse, a guard, a trans man, anybody who's a woman is not going to benefit from any of this kind of legislation. I wish, again, like Heather said, I wish that there were more guards who would come forward, but they're just not. And until people's until these women's safety and well-being is more important than pensions, they're probably not going to say a whole lot. I get a lot of encouragement secretly. I get a lot of messages from women in prison whose boss or my old bosses or my old housing staff will say, hey, tell her, she's doing great. That was a great article in the New York Post or this and that, but they won't say anything publicly. And I understand you've got to feed your family. You have a career. It's not something that I could do because I live in a trash can before I, went ahead and green lighted this or didn't speak publicly about it.
Yeah. We're going to let Daria have the last question. Claire, we're not going to take any more requests for mics because it's just about wrap-up time for us. So, and Daria can't raise her hand, so go for it.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, brilliant. Hello, everybody. It's very late it's the wee small hours of the morning here in London in the UK. But listening to the stories and from the women in prison in Canada and US, it just sort of struck me. And I heard the mention of a story in the Washington Post. I don't know, just briefly there. And it just struck me that these stories need to be, if they can be, even the lady guards that have retired, they're verified stories, if they're willing to verify them, and need to be put together and put out there, however they get out there, whether they get out there through people like Julie Bindel on Substack or Spiked, or however they get out there. It's about, there is huge journalistic value in all of these stories that I've been hearing through the evening. Has an attempt been made to do that? And that might be a naive question, because there probably has been an attempt to do that, to get these stories collated, verified, and out there into whether it is lesser known online, magazines, newspapers, whatever. But they might find their way into, the Washington Post, for example, or the Times in London, or the Telegraph in London, or the Observer. It would never get into the Guardian for the reasons that we all know.
So in Canada, our mainstream media won't touch it. So you're not going to find somebody other than Rebel News or the Toronto Sun that's going to report, and the True North, that's going to report on any of this. I've tried with CBC, I've tried CTV, Global News, all of them. Some of the journalists have shown interest, and then their editor would axe the story. So I've given up on that. But I just sent Bookish a link to Gender Dissent, which is a Canadian organization here that writes about gender identity. And they actually, so 3 years ago when I did the survey of incarcerated women, I gave them the option of giving me more detail about what had happened or different stories. And they actually published a collection of prison letters for me. So I will get her to put it up in the nest so that you can read some of the things that these women have gone through. I think it's important to read them and hear their voices. I wish that our media would do something here, but I'm not holding my breath. It's very unfortunate that we don't have the media like you do in the UK and the US.
Can I just, sorry to interrupt, can I also suggest that you put that in the downstairs comments as well, because when you put it there, as soon as the space ends, nobody can see it. So please put it in the down below comments as well.
Unfortunately, I'm only able to share it through direct message, so I have messaged several people with it, and we'll try and get it out there. So,
Oh, good. Thank you.
yeah, you bet. And everything else that was in the nest that I posted is on my own timeline, so you can try and find it there. If you don't have to follow me, you can just look at my timeline if that's going to work. Speaking of time, where's our timekeeper?
I'm here.
I just really, really want to thank both Heather and Amie for giving us this 2 hours of your time and for all of the work that you do, and just so much respect for both of you. Absolutely amazing. Heather, I'll definitely be in touch. I will be joining protests. I'll be free as of the end of April and traveling and stuff, and wherever I am, if there's a protest, I will absolutely go. I just can't say it enough. We have to start really taking this on. These women really, really need us. Peach?
Yeah, this great space. Just to both Heather and Amie, if you have something that you want to be us to, we're always about empowering each other. So if there's something you want us to mention in our weekly space, just send us a DM of it and we'll be glad to. And just really great space. And thank you both so much for coming, and excellent questions from everyone.
Yes, thanks to everybody who spoke, and thanks to everybody who cares about this, honestly. I know we want to talk briefly about our space next week because Amie has something on the go and she wants to. Did you already post some links for us, Em, or are you doing that now?
I will do that as soon as we close up. So I will put those attached to the pill as a response, so people will be able to access them. Shall I just give a little trailer of things to come then, as we're now 2 minutes over time? Okay, I see
You
P just
bet.
giving me the thumb. I can feel the hook coming out to pull me off. So okay, I'll be really brief. So yeah, what I wanted to share was I talked to PJ and Bookish about this. Was I stumbled across something about 2 weeks ago, and it really struck me that in view of the WPATH files that have come out and the recent announcements about the UK's national health system and the French government's attitudes towards puberty blockers and children changing, it seemed like a good time to maybe watch and then discuss. I mean, watch beforehand, not watch it all together next week, but to watch it beforehand and then discuss the PBS Frontline documentary called Growing Up Trans. So it's a 90-minute film. It was nominated for a Peabody Award when it came out. And it goes really deep into the lives of 6 children from the ages of 9 through 16 who are struggling with body issues and their identities. And we also see their parents as they all go through these struggles together, trying to find how to go forward. And what the 2 filmmakers have done is take us inside their lives, both at home and in the doctor's offices, which are really eye opening as they discuss the different options. So here's the thing, the film premiered back in June of 2015 and was filmed the year before that. So this is the 10th anniversary now. And during this time next week, we'll discuss who were the directors, who were the children profiled and their parents, who were the doctors, and we'll also discuss how the film was made and its impact then and now. And just a heads up, I'm sure some of you may be thinking like, oh, do I really want to watch this? Maybe this is quite seriously done in its approach. It's not sensational. It really is done with quite a strong journalistic point of view, and this is not like Jazz Jennings or something. But given that it came out such a while ago, the strange thing is, as you watch it, I'd be surprised if you wouldn't agree that it could have been filmed like last year in many ways. So I think it could be a really interesting discussion, and I think the film was very well made. So I'll leave that there, and I'll be posting links to where you can watch it online, no matter where you are in the world. Cheers. And apologies for the cat howling in the background. He wants his second dinner.
Well, thank you, Amie, and we're looking forward to that next week. So hopefully some of you will be able to join us, if not all. And again, just thank you so much to Heather and to Amie, and can't thank you enough for your work too. Makes me really emotional. Sorry.
We hope you come back. Please come back.
Thank you, ladies. This was great timing. I really needed that encouragement. So thank you. And it's always good to see or hear Heather too. So this has been very, very encouraging, and I much appreciated.